Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here at Black Star Network. Each and every week, we're bringing you tools, tips, and resources that literally can change your life. And today, we're going to be talking about common sense, which we're finding is not so common. As we're moving into the spaces in which we will be each and every day, some of you have gone back to work, others of you are sending your kids to school, some of you have even sent your kids to college. And yes, you may be wondering, all the things that you taught your little one, will they go with them in the spaces that you occupy? Well, today we're going to be talking about that very thing. How do we allow our children to grow up and embrace those things that really should be imparted to them? How can we really assist them and guide them with those things that should be imparted in their lives and give them the tools that they need to be successful when they're talking to their teachers, when they're engaging other adults, when they're just having time with their friends? So Pastor JT, Charlotte Avery, Dr. Tierney, and Stacey Owens are here today to help us really discover why common sense is not that common. How is it that we can impart that wisdom into our kids? And how do we help our adults, these parents, kind of step back and say it's okay to let the village step in and give your child some guidance? Hey, everybody.
Hey, Dr. Jacquie.
Hello. Let me tell you, I am super excited about this topic that we're talking about today, because even I have those moments where I have to say, girl, what are you doing? And what are you thinking? And why did you make that move or that step? And sometimes a lot of people don't know how to navigate their situations and circumstances. So before we get to talking about our kids and how we give them common sense, how about each of you tell us a little bit of something that you may have learned about gaining, getting, keeping, acquiring some common sense? Stacey Owens. I'm coming to you today.
You're coming to me today. Okay, I'm ready. So I would say for me, I used to say that I didn't operate a lot from common sense because, I started out this journey just always reading and enhancing my book sense or my ability to follow whatever the directions that were given in a book. But then I started becoming this entrepreneur, and I learned in a lot of cases that, some of the stuff they were putting in the book is true, but it's those experiences that will keep you from going under. So now I'm sort of moving into that common sense space where I'm trying not to overcomplicate any ideas, just trying to take the situation as it is and just say, hey, what's the simplistic way and the logical way to get through this? So, and I had to do that by putting a few people around me, like my friends. I identified those who operated out of common sense space more than me. And I started checking stuff off of them because, honey, you get lost in the book and then you start trying to apply that stuff and life will tell you, no, that's not how we're going to do it.
Oh, now that's a very valid point. Life is going to tell you that is not how we do it. Pastor JT.
Well, I think that I would probably piggyback off my sister, Stacey. Life is an amazing teacher, but life is a teacher that doesn't grade on the curve. Again, I think our viewers know that I speak of my mother a lot, and being the son of a retired educator, I remember helping her at times grade papers and do her scantrons at the end of the 6 weeks. And there would be some students that would kind of teeter and need a few extra points. And she would always be such a loving teacher and would give to those that deserved them. And I would always ask her, well, what made you give to this student versus that student? And she would always say, well, because they tried and they put forth an effort, and she would maybe give them an E for effort. Well, viewers, life ain't my mama. Life does not give you any ease for effort. If you flunk, you flunk. But one thing about life is life continues to teach you that same lesson over and over again until you learn it. And I believe it's those life lessons, the ones that we really don't want to learn, the ones that we really don't want to embrace. Those are the best lessons that actually prepare us to go to the next class. Stacey is an amazing educator, and I believe every educator will tell you that it is impossible for you to excel or go to the next level if you have not mastered the previous course. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people in life that are being passed along in life that have not passed the previous course. And we actually encounter them on a daily basis. And that's how we learn that common sense just ain't common sense. So I believe that those life lessons and then a healthy dose of fear from my daddy. I'm still scared of that man.
Sometimes the fear works and sometimes so do other things. I tell you, how we engage in life and get the lessons that we need each and every day really can spur us on to say, how do I weigh the things in my life? How do I achieve the balance that I'm seeking? Is it book sense? Is it street sense? Is it common sense? Charlotte Avery.
So for me, I was raised in church. And I was doing church real good, and I was following, always when you're raised in church and you're following biblical principles and your parents are teaching you biblical principles and all these things. And it's church. The thing is that church is not bad, but it's important as parents that my children are PKs too, but, I'm always really careful to teach my kids the spiritual and the practical. And I think sometimes when we're so much doing church and we're trying to raise our children up in the way that they should go, we sometimes forget to tell them the practical and how to navigate in the world. It's like, the principle of, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, for me, I've always been a very loving and giving person, but I had to take a step back when I found out, as a child and as a teenager and even as an adult, that you can love your neighbor as yourself all you want, but then what do you do? We don't teach, well, what do you do when your neighbor doesn't love you back? And so I've just, been really careful in my life, to say, okay, let me learn from, not my mom's mistakes of raising me in church, but I'm always thinking of what are the spiritual and the practical lessons that I'm supposed to learn. How do they go, and how does it go both ways?
Absolutely. Dr. Tierney.
So I'm going to respond using some of what Charlotte just said and some of what Pastor JT just said. What my mama taught me was that I need both of them, BOAF, both of them. I needed the street sense and I needed common sense. That was something that she started with me very early. So she would always tell me that they could tell right out the gate that I was very intelligent, loved to read, very analytical, very inquisitive. And I was the kid that say, why does the moon follow the car? And so she wanted to make sure that I had all of the book sense, all of the intellect, everything, but also when it was time to handle your business, then you knew how to handle your business. Well, nobody gonna be selling me no wood nickels. It wasn't gonna be any of that business going on. So she would always, anytime I would ask her something, use your common sense, Tierney. So she, a lot of times, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, Mama, that was kind of tough. I would ask her a question and she wouldn't answer. She would just look at me and say, what does your common sense say? And I say, well, the instruction said, or what does your common sense say? And she would stand there and wait for me to answer her with that common sense answer, because she knew life was not always going to give it to me in a book. It wasn't always going to be on the instructions, that sometimes I would have to kind of buck the system a little bit, that I would need to know what the rules were. So I would know what rules needed to be, responded with the little street wisdom and what rules needed to be responded with the book or the common sense. So I was raised from very, very little to have all of the different types of knowledge, information, common sense, book sense, street sense, all of it. So both of them. Mm-hmm.
I have to say, I love that.
BOAF. Both.
Oh, both. BOAF dash all of that. You guys are saying some things that are really important and critical to how we are engaging in society today. And when we come back after the break, there's a new hashtag that's out. Hashtag TikTok taught me. We're going to talk about that when we get back, because between social media, common sense, street sense, book sense, and all the other wisdoms that are out there, sometimes it just doesn't gel. When we're back after the break.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Welcome back, everybody, to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie. Now, our contributors have already espoused some really great wisdom, some tips and tools, and shared some of their stories about how common sense has helped them, how they learned it and when they learned it, and they're holding on to some of those same principles today. Now, I have to tell you, I like social media. I've been on social media since social media started. I'm what you consider an early adopter. And recently, I've seen some commercials on social media that say hashtag TikTok taught me. I want to have this conversation about what these streets are teaching our kids and how does that help or hinder how we manage what happens in our home. Welcome back, everybody. Let me tell you, hashtag TikTok taught me. I watched some of those videos and I'm like, no, like there should be a disclaimer at the end of something like, don't try this at home. Don't try this ever in life. This is really not how it's done. I think one of my favorite ones is they tell people how to eat wings. And I have to tell you, you cannot pull apart bones on a wing both at the same time without pre-breaking them. So there's some things to me that say common sense is just not there.
Right.
Talk to me, y'all, because I'm confused about how social media is really twisting the values and the things that we teach in the home because it's not all accurate. Charlotte A., mom of 7, wife of 1.
Yeah.
So, this TikTok taught me foolishness. Let me just say, like, it is in and through my house. And I'm like, where are you guys getting these things from? And then I look at them, like, even just like in appearance, I'm like, that's a filter. That's not even real life. I mean, not only are we living a TikTok taught me life, but we're living a very filtered life. Like you think that this is like real stuff and it's not. Now, I don't mind TikTok teaching, because one of my kids, like she loves to bake and things like that. And so she'll like find these recipes. I don't mind those things, right? But then she made something one time and she's like, but it's not rising. It's not doing whatever. And I follow the directions. And it's like some of these people are putting things on TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat just to make it all look good. And then when you go and try it yourself, now you don't even realize that they left out an ingredient. Like, what in the world? Like, it is just so, I just can't. And now, like, I have my older kids who, I've kind of like loosened the reins a little bit and let them, have a social media presence a little bit. But now my younger kids, they're doing stuff. My 8-year-old was around here like gyrating. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I saw that on Ario's TikTok thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is just not the right thing. And you're 8. Like these things aren't even age appropriate, some of them. Like I just can't. Like what?
Y'all see that what with an exclamation point and all the face that she gave, because it's that thing that makes us say, we need to be able to monitor what our kids are doing and watch what's happening. And I know it's my room. It's my privacy. You don't respect me. And even that is a common sense issue. First of all, you live in a house where somebody else is paying the bills. They bought the clothes that you're wearing. They pay for the cell phone that you have. And so some of this attitude that social media is teaching our kids is unraveling the work that parents are doing in order to instill value and wisdom and smart ways of thinking with the kids. Pastor JT, from a faith perspective, what are you seeing? Because I know you have lots of youth that you work with and they run through your church all the time and everything that they're doing ain't church.
So where do I start? We're talking about the youth. I'm seeing some pastors that are doing some stuff that ain't church. But I digress. Um, I think what the World Wide Web has done, if we think about the World Wide Web, and we have, kind of taken the World Wide Web and we now mask it as social media. And I understand social media, but social media, we access it through the World Wide Web. What has happened, if we think about it figuratively, it's a web that includes the world. So what was once me, mine, and thine, what my mom and dad taught me was strictly for ours. I didn't have anybody else to bounce it off of. I didn't have anybody else to compare it to. Maybe to the extent of maybe looking at a television father, maybe comparing my dad to James Evans or Heathcliff Huxtable. That was my extent. But now our world, we are in comparison every day with the living rooms of the world. So now as a parent, I now have to look beyond just my house and even my children's friends or who they are having access to at school. Now I have to monitor their phones and I have to see what they are being exposed to, because being a part of the 100 Black Men of America, our motto is what they see is what they'll be. But I have understood that encompasses everything in life. What we see turns into what we will be. And social media right now has a grip on the necks of our world, everything in our world. I'm even talking about, I had a community outreach event with one of the major networks, national networks, that said that nobody is watching TV anymore. They are opting now to develop content for social media, for their TikTok channel. So you have to think about, TikTok is not just teaching us, but TikTok is training us. So now when you think about it from a church standpoint, I'm always asking, well, what are you looking for? Because what you look for will determine what you look at. So I believe that as a parent, I believe that it's always our responsibility to model in front of our kids healthy attraction. Because if you're looking for healthy things, because you can learn about the stock market on social media, you can learn about credit on social media, you can learn about real estate on social media, as well as you can get into some of the black holes of social media. So now we have to start looking at the healthy diet. What are our children looking for? And I believe that that's modeled from us. But now if we are competing with our children to have the next best dance craze, or we're trying to go viral as parents, then our children are going to follow suit.
Following suit, it goes back to the old adage that we would hear growing up: monkey see, monkey do. And this is not a slight against social media, because it's already been stated there's some great tools and information. Heck, most of you are watching us right now on some streaming platform that is a part of social media. So there is good, but the key is, how do we balance those things? Now, Dr. Tierney, when we talk about balance and common sense in social media, how do we help our parents navigate? Because I know they have on there what's age appropriate, what's not age appropriate. When should you put on these locks and passwords for certain things at certain ages so that we can keep the home in balance?
Absolutely. So when we're talking about balancing these different levels of intelligence or information or knowledge, we have to think about not so much what age of the child, but where the child is. So I was 13, and my mom says it to this day. She says, Tierney, you're really functioning like you already 50. When I was 13, I was functioning like I was already 21, because that's where my age, my understanding, that's what I'm trying to say, my intellect, how I carried myself at 13 was on par with someone at 21. So you may have a child that's 18, but they really kind of at the maturity level of a 12-year-old, so you have to take that into consideration when we're talking about locks and, exposure and exposing them to what at what time. But something, when you said the balance, I love that you said that, balancing these different levels of intellect and information and things like that. When I think about kind of the senses, if you will, I think about book sense, I think about common sense, I think about street sense, and I think about spiritual sense. Now, the reason my mom wanted me to have both of them, all of them, was because sometimes you need to create that balance. You have to ping the information all out off of all of these. You can't come at life just totally out of the book, or just totally from street, or just totally from common sense. You're going to have to use all of them. So something that comes to my mind, something that I learned on the street, something that was really in the movie Players Club. My favorite line out of Players Club. Ronnie, you better use what you got to get what you want. Now, the context that she said it in, that ain't what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, just use what you got to get what you want. Now, I've said that on social media. I've said it in graduation commencement speeches. I've taken that bit of information from the street, and I could take it to the spiritual, because when you think about what Moses, when he was being to God telling him, you're going to lead the people out. Moses like, I stutter. I don't have it. He said, what's in your hand? Moses, look at what's in your hand. Use what you got to do what I'm telling you. If you take it to common sense, I could use a stick to break, to build. I can use a stick to mix things. I can use this stick in different ways. Common sense. You could take it to book sense. Okay, the particles that make up this stick are composed of wood or H2 whatever. I mean, you can take that in all of the different levels of understanding, but you could take something from the street, make it spiritual. You could take something from spiritual, common. You could take it from common to book. So when we're talking about balance, this is why we need all of these different types of understanding and senses. This is why, as parents, as aunties, as uncles, we need to guide our children and not totally protect them from the street. Some of the stuff from the street, they're going to need to know it just so they can recognize it and not fall in the trap. Some of it they're going to need to know and what says God, because he is the source of all wisdom. Some of it they're just going to need to know it in their common sense. And then sometimes they may need to go and look it up in a book, not just from the internet, not just from web pages, because you can't trust all of that. You're going to have to go to an old school encyclopedia, dictionary sometimes, and actually look it up and understand it from that side of it. So it's all of these understandings that we have to have in order to have that balance and know when it's time to do whatever it is that we are doing. Got it? Boom.
So I want to take a break right now, because when we come back after the break, I want to continue this conversation, because a lot of what we've heard is going to guide us to being able to really hone in on some tools and tips that will allow us to help people stay grounded while at the same time move forward. When we're back after the break, I'm going to engage Stacey Owens in a conversation. We'll be back in a moment.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you've just heard, common sense, book sense, street sense, spiritual sense, all the senses have to be engaged in what we're doing. And as we're talking about how social media is influencing our kids, whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all of these platforms are giving our kids something that they are not getting from us. Stacey, when we think about how children present themselves to the world, it oftentimes doesn't look like something that came from the home. It looks like something that they saw in a comic book, something they got from a movie, something they learned from social media. How do we balance all of these different behaviors that children are bringing with them into the classroom?
Wow. So I would say, I would always tell my teachers that one, we have to stay relevant, right? So when you guys were talking about what TikTok taught me, I thought to myself, I'm so busy. I haven't been able to go to TikTok and see what it's teaching folks. But I have heard when students come into the building and they'll say, it's this latest trend going on where you're supposed to come and slap your teacher. And if I hear a child talk about that, I'm like, okay, wait, now Zecca is not going to, the response that you're going to get if you come and slap one of our teachers is not going to be the typical response that you would get somewhere else. So you got to be careful with that kind of thing. So I always tell the teachers to listen out to what conversations the students are having about what they're getting from social media. And then let's get ahead of it and have the appropriate conversations with them to talk about, how is that influencing you? And what is the consequences and the things that's going to come from that, that's going to give you that other side of balance? So when Pastor JT was saying that, he likes to say, what are you looking for? I spend my time teaching kids, time is money. So how are you spending your time? What are you spending your time to do? If you're spending your time doing things that's not in the long run going to put you in a position that's going to generate you some income, then is that the best space to be spending your time? So I don't have a problem with kids being on TikTok and social media and using that, but I want to make sure that you're looking from it from that side that it can be beneficial to you. So what can you, how can you go and become an influencer to do things that's going to generate something back to you? But if you're just up there wasting brain cells, and kids of today like to do that. They like to get on YouTube and just watch stories of other people. If you're not looking at it from an angle of how can I use this social media or this format so that I can be able to have ads and things coming to me, then are we looking at it from the right perspective? Because if you're only looking at it for entertainment, and they say it's mostly for entertainment, because when you put something silly on one of those social platforms, you get thousands of likes. You put some serious content up there, it takes you forever to grow it. So I always tell the kids, have balance in that. Do the silly thing, but also think about what can you do so that you can be influencing people in the right way, and it can generate something for you. They tend to like the silly side better because that just what makes sense to kids. Then that's when their adults come into place, because you do have to monitor it. You do have to make sure that they're using it in a way that is safe for them. Because I had one young man here. He was on, I don't even remember which platform it was on, but he was being tracked by a sex trafficker. And the mom was like, I didn't even know that he was on this platform, because I told him he couldn't be on any of these platforms until he turned 18. And I thought, okay, well, Mom, you're being delusional. She kept deleting the site, and he would put it back on, and she would delete it again. He would download it again. And so I'm like, well, now that we know that the exposure is there, let's flip it and say, how can I teach you how to be on these platforms safely? What is it that you need to know? Because it's a whole lot of stuff that come with that World Wide Web. So I think we need to find a balance in teaching kids how to navigate through it so that they can be safe and your household can be safe as well.
So let's talk about that for a moment. Let's bring everybody back in, because both Stacy and Dr. Tierney have alluded to what's called transference of skill set. And oftentimes how we navigate as well as negotiate with the people that live in our homes and the people that we mentor and coach, it can switch things up a little bit. So if they're engaging and consuming so much knowledge from social media platforms, watching television, being on their smartphones, how do we take them or allow them to discover the common sense of transferring a skill set? I know Dr. Tierney used an example of taking a piece of wood and seeing the various things that you can do with it. And Charlotte, you talked about cooking, and Pastor JT, talked a lot about the mentoring component and those aspects. So how do we help parents navigate this space of using social media to help build common sense? I'll start with Dr. Tierney.
So the first thing, and this is something, again, my mom, I'm talking about my mama all day today, apparently. So pre-social media, but what she did was she met me where I was, and she didn't sugarcoat or hide anything from me. She explained to me at a level that I could understand it, and that at a level that I could receive it, what this thing was and why, it is what it is, and what are some of the repercussions of it, and how I should or shouldn't interact, with it, so that it wasn't just something that she was telling me, no, don't do, don't use. So when we use that tactic of the because I said so, you can't be on social media because I said so, all that's going to do is make Timmy want to get on social media more. But when we meet the student, meet the child, meet the niece, meet them, and this is honestly something that I do in my coaching practice with my clients, meet them where they are, and see what is it that is attractive to them about it. What is it that they want to do on it? What is it that they understand about it, and engage in a conversation with them instead of talking at them about it. Then we can get a better feel for where they are, what it is that they're hoping to gain from it. And then we can dialogue with them to say, hey, here's really what this thing is, or here's how to use it for your benefit, or let me introduce something else that you may find that will really give you the satisfaction or the entertainment or the balance or whatever it is, that you're looking for. And at that point, that person is more apt to actually hear you and actually follow what it is that you're coaching them to do, or guiding them or training them to do, instead of just saying, no, you can't do it because I said so.
Absolutely. Charlotte Avery.
So, there's this trend going around in like parenting circles, and they're talking about like gentle parenting, right? Like, don't yell at your kids, don't say I told you so, and all these things. Well, I'm of that generation and of that thought, especially, in writing the 40-day tone of voice tone down, is that yelling is for emergencies only. And, I believe that when it comes to the gentle parenting aspect, I think there's a time to be gentle and there's a time to be firm, especially when it comes to saving the lives of your children. But let me just say this, as a parent, parenting will really humble you. Okay. And if it hasn't humbled anybody who's watching this, parenting has humbled me time after time after time. And I remember one time, and we're talking about teaching our kids common sense. So, for 2.5 years, I homeschooled two of my older children. And sometimes when you have chosen to be a humble parent, then you start to incline your ears more to your children and what they're saying to you. Mm-hmm. So, to make a long story short, one of my older children came to me with a level of frustration because she said to me, you didn't prepare. And I didn't even know that she had been stuffing this for a very long time. But she said, you didn't prepare us for the things that we would encounter when we went back into school. Well, when my two older children went back into school, they were in middle school. And, I had very serious conversations with them about school and the things that would happen in school. And, now that they're in middle school and stuff like that. But, she said, you didn't prepare us for, the fact, the level of cursing that kids would do. You didn't prepare us for the fact that kids were going to be smoking weed and having sex and doing all of these things in middle school. And in my mind, I'm like, but I did. But obviously, I really didn't do a good job of it. So in listening to my children, when my other children started going into middle school, before they were going into middle school, I had different conversations. But, I had to humble myself and listen to her heart space to say, you know what? Obviously, I didn't do a good job of teaching you this, but now how can I be humble, listen, and then teach these other lessons, not only to my other children, but to other people's children and other parents who, who I coach and, who I work with and all of those different things. And I think sometimes what happens is that as parents, we're like, well, I'm the parent, right? But there are certain things, we are not our children's own sphere of influence. And so we have to understand and be humble as parents, realizing that there are things that our children are learning in the world that we don't even know about. Mm-hmm. But if we choose to be humble parents and we really choose to really put humble parenting in action, then we will listen to the things that our children are saying verbally or non-verbally. And then we will start teaching and navigating them in different ways. And so I think sometimes we have to be able to say, okay, what are the lessons that our children need to teach us that we're not even aware of, so that we can now be in the know? And I think sometimes as parents, when we take that stance of, I'm the parent and what I said, and I said this and I said that. Sometimes that's necessary, but sometimes it's not. And so my thing is, sometimes as parents, I just want to implore parents who are watching to, use humble parenting. Humble yourself enough to say, you know what? My kids have a voice, they have an opinion, and really see what it is that's really going on in their world so that you can really understand and know the things that you don't know, because we don't know what we don't know. And so if we don't know what we don't know, then we have to go to the source, and our kids know. So just be humble.
Charlotte Avery just said a mouthful, and I mean that in the most respectful way, because oftentimes it's the listening that can get us into trouble, because we hear what we want to hear and we tune out the rest, because if it doesn't fit into this box or this space, we're not willing to open up a new chapter or a new area in order for us to really start to apply. And we're talking about, how do we transfer these skills that our children are learning, that they're hearing from other people, that they're seeing being done out there in the world, and we're saying to ourselves, wait, I didn't teach you that. I remember growing up, my mom was like, that is not something that I taught you. Where'd you get that from? And constantly at the end of the day, we'd be like, okay, so what did you buy in today or buy into today that I haven't taught you? And it raises that question for me now as we're thinking about, how do we have this balance in the home when so many outside factors are influencing our young ones and our young adults? You need to ask your kids, what is it that they bought into today that you haven't taught them? Because what that means is they're taking on attitudes, behaviors, and understanding of other people, and they are figuring out how to put them into motion into ways that you are also teaching them. When we come back after the break, we're going to continue this conversation. We'll be right back.
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished? There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it. And I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And we're talking about common sense and how it's not that common. And all of our contributors today have given us some great wisdom keys and tools and tips on how to listen to our kids, how to hear what they're saying, how to humble ourselves, but also how do we navigate what's happening with them so that we can make certain that things don't happen to them. I want to invite Pastor JT into this conversation and, really share with us some things that relate to how do we transfer these skills that we're learning from these outside entities into life and make them work for us in a positive way, so that not only the home isn't upset, but the way in which we're trying to focus our lives and move them forward. Pastor JT.
That's a great question, Dr. Jacquie. And I'm so grateful to have come behind my sisters, so I can just say ditto, piggyback off of what they're saying. But I honestly believe that, what they're saying is so key, but not just from a parenting standpoint, but from us as parents, us navigating life, because we're learning. Because if we have ever gotten to a point where school is out, then we have capped out, and we will only be what we have grown to be now. And so that speaks to why there are some people who have one age on their driver's license, but their minds or their mentalities stopped at a certain level because they stopped growing. Life, as I heard when I was growing up, life is full of swift transitions. And so if we are not cognizant of what's going on around us, we will be rigid, and life will happen to us instead of happening for us. And I believe that when we are present, when we are knowledgeable of what's going on, and we are adapting and applying. I was in a different conversation, and this young gentleman made a statement, and it has stuck with me. And we were talking about this right at the height of quarantine. And he made a statement on the heels of us looking at all of our previous big box stores and all of the entities that we were accustomed to seeing as we grew up kind of fall off and close down and be shells of themselves or even close completely. He said that now we're in a place where we either adapt or die. And so I believe that with all of the new information that's coming across, the new methods of information getting to us, because everything is new, but everything is old. Because if you think about it, TikTok, while it is all the rave now, man, we came up during the MySpace era. Our big thing was finding out what our wallpaper was going to be, the music that was going to be on our page when you came on, and our top 5. And that seemed as if that was a whole new world, but there was a lot that was happening in that particular space. But then in that particular space, we developed something that built and catapulted what we see now as social media. So we really kind of started it. So our children are really just following our lead. So then now I would beg to ask parents, if you're listening, ask yourself, am I being the parent for my child in 2022 that I needed my parent to be for me in 1992? Am I giving them an open door policy? Am I answering their questions? Am I being defensive? Am I being the bridge that they need to take them from confusion to understanding? If I cannot look in the mirror and justifiably say that I am at least being the prayer that I prayed for when I said the lyrics from Will Smith, parents just don't understand, I am really doing my children a disservice, which now is going to continue on, and my grandkids will have the adverse responsibility of growing up with children that I didn't prepare properly, and they had to learn by trial and error rather than me giving them the blueprint.
Now, you just gave the perfect segue to where I was going. Oftentimes, we do talk about things that our parents taught us, didn't teach us, ways we like growing up, things that should have been said to us that weren't, and things that had been said to us that we wish we could take back. So, under the hashtag change that, I'd like for our audience to think about that for a moment. What are some things that you would change? And I'm going to ask our contributors today to talk about that for a moment. If you could say hashtag change that, Stacey Owens, what is something that you would change? That way going forward, it would be better and different. Hashtag change that.
Allow children to make mistakes. Let's change that. Because I know for me and mine, as a parent, you're in such a protective mode that when you think about common sense is that short-term thinking. And I look at the book sense as being that long-term thinking. Like you can see something that you're about to do and you could think what the effects of it down the road. And as parents, we try to prevent our children from doing this one thing that might affect them later. So I think we should change that. Let them make the mistake because that's what they're going to learn from. They're going to grow in that space of the mistakes.
Dr. Tierney.
Hashtag, let's change this narrative of thinking that we only need a degree or that we only need to know what saith the street or that we only need common sense. Let's start thinking about our intellect and our senses as a multifaceted thing that is comprised of what we learn in the classroom, what we learn in the street, what we learn in church, what we learn from our elders, what is common in our communities. Let's look at that from a bigger sense for us adults, us grown folks, and for how we now raise our children.
Pastor JT, hashtag change that.
Hashtag change everything. Change that and that.
Change all of that.
Change all of that. But I think if I could get one, change that thought that you don't have time, that you're in a rat race every day, that you're trying to become the biggest, the baller, the first millionaire in your family today. Take some time, enjoy life, because I'm here to tell you, you only get this moment. And when this moment is over, you're going to wish that you took some time to enjoy you and enjoy the process of life and not just be stressed out trying to check and get the bag. And then when you get the bag, you've lost your mind.
Well, there's a lot of people out there losing their minds. Charlotte Avey, hashtag change that.
Show up. Show up. Sometimes as parents, especially parents who have been raised by baby boomers and now, I'm a Gen Xer and my children are being raised by me. And, we've just been in so much the hustle and bustle of life that, sometimes we forget that showing up really matters. That making memories and making moments really matter, that they matter more than, yeah, your kids want Jordans and they want the best stylish things, but you know what, they're going to grow out of Jordans, they're going to grow out of things, but you know what, have experiences, show up, teach your children to experience life instead of thinking that life is just going to always give them something that later down the road is just going to be outdated and things of that nature. But show up. Don't be so busy. I have this sign that says, never get so busy. What does it say? Never get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. And so show up, go to games, go to activities, do things with your kids, take them places. I have friends who took their kids, like their elementary school and middle school kids, they took them to Dubai. I'm like, you could have taken me to Dubai. Why did you do that? But they're making memories, things that their kids will never forget. There'll be precious moments. I don't want to look back on my life and my children be able to say my mom didn't show up for me. And so, or my dad didn't show up for me. You can show up. You might not be able to show up in the way that other parents show up for their kids, but, make sure that you do your best to show up in the ways that you can.
All right, everybody come on back, because if you could give, I love that, hashtag change that. And what you've talked about in this moment gives us an opportunity to really set the tone for where people go next. Pastor JT, one thing that you would do differently if you had a do-over?
Me, if I could do one thing different, I wouldn't have spent so much money in my 20s.
Woo! Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You're like the male version of myself.
Dr. Tier, what's your do-over?
Hashtag clap that. Okay, so honestly, if I had a do-over, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't do anything over, because all the money that I blew in my 20s, it taught me how to be fiscally responsible. All of the mistakes, it taught me, so I wouldn't be sitting here all of this that I am now had it not been for all of the mistakes that I made, even all of the mistakes that my mom made, and that my parents made. It helped to shape me into who I am right now. So if I had a do-over, I honestly would not change one thing.
All right, Charlotte Avery.
I would have invested. I would have invested younger. I would have invested in my 20s. Like I would have invested in stocks and things like that, instead of like shoes and stuff that are filled up in my closet, and some of them I don't even have anymore. But I would have invested money. I would have, gotten some stock in some things. I mean, because I spent a lot of money in my 20s. I was living at home, living my best life with my mom, wearing my clothes, her clothes, when I could still fit her clothes at the time. I was doing good. But yeah, I would have invested. I would have invested financially, so that, now at almost 50, I would be able to have more of a retirement nest egg and things of that nature.
Absolutely. Stacey Owens.
Wow. I would say that I would show my kids, my personal kids, because my kids are grown now. When I was raising them, I was raising them out of the fear of, I did not want them to have the struggles that I had when I was their age. So they didn't see the ins and out of how life has valleys and it has, mountains. You're going to have good and you're going to have bad. You're going to have struggles. You're going to have prosperity. And so now that they see me in the position that I'm in now, it's hard to help them to make the connections of how I got here, because all they remember is I worked all the time and I was a very hard worker. But now that they're adults and it's time for them to produce who they are, when they're in their low points, They didn't see me in my low points or see me crying at night or seeing the struggles that I was having, because I was trying to protect and shield them from that. So now it's hard for them to navigate through that emotionally and so forth. So I think I always say, if I could do anything over, I would let them struggle a little bit so that they can be able to, one, appreciate the things that they were given in life and opportunities that they're given in life, and then knowing how to manage themselves through it without it being so difficult. So
absolutely.
That's a whole nother show.
I appreciate that so much. Hand clap for everybody, because I'm gonna tell you, everything that you have stated today has given us that opportunity to really explore not only how we transfer skill sets in order to be balanced, but it also teaches us how to navigate the nuances of life that we do try to shield our loved ones from. But some of the hard lessons in life people do need to go through. When we're back after the break, I'll give my reflection. We'll be right back, everyone.
The overturning of Roe almost killed me. I had a blood clot in my uterus that caused my labor to have to be induced because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I wasn't able to get life-saving treatment sooner. I almost died. And that's because of the decision that Donald Trump made.
I was able to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I'm proud to have done it.
The doctors and nurses were afraid that if they treated me in the incorrect way, that they would be prosecuted for that. And that's appalling. Donald Trump says that women should be punished.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment. For the woman? Yeah.
I believe that women should have reproductive freedom to make the choices about their own bodies. 4 more years of Donald Trump means that women's rights will continue to be taken away one by one by one by one. This has to stop because women are dying.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. As you can see, having common sense is not that common, but there are ways to gain it. I hope that our guests today have given you an opportunity to really explore what your life can look like when you put all of your senses together. You do have to be present. You have to engage. You have to be humble. You have to be honest. And I tell you, being transparent is not easy, but it is well worth it. Have those hard conversations with the people that you love. Have it with your kids. Talk to your children when you pick them up from school, whether you're driving, walking, riding a bike, however it is that you have quality time, maximize it. I tell you all the time, we chase a lot of things, but we should be chasing those things that are memorable so that when your kids are older, they can sit back and say, like we're saying today, these are the lessons that we were taught, and oh, how we embrace them. And this is for all ages and stages of life. Thank you, everybody, for watching A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here on Black Star Network. Bye now.